Okay. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I have 14:30 Eastern on the dial. We'll kick off today's event. Welcome to the March Innovation Connect, hosted by the Department of the Air Force Chief Data and AI Office. My name is Colonel Ryan Kehoe, and I am the Deputy Chief Data and AI Officer to the CDAO, and I will be your moderator today. As always, the purpose of the Innovation Connect is to create a collaborative atmosphere for those working in the Department of Defense to cross-pollinate ideas across organizations to enhance innovation and identify and solve problems related to our research and development and scaling. We are excited about today's event and thank you for attending. Before we get started though, I would like to share a few housekeeping rules. If you are not a presenter today, we ask that you please keep your camera off and your microphone on mute. Second, we ask that you keep questions to the topics presented and refrain from any media-related questions or advertisements for your company or organization. So now, with those rules established, I would like to further introduce our speaker, Colonel Rockwell. With over 20 years of experience in technology, Colonel Rockwell, as I said, is the Deputy Chief of the United States Space Force Chief Technology and Innovation Office. In this role, he is charged with unlocking and harnessing innovation to leverage increased speed and advantage for Space Force initiatives and operations. Additionally, Colonel Rockwell is responsible for assisting in the development of strategy and policy to advance science, technology, research development, and test and evaluation by employing cutting-edge technologies to transform the United States Space Force while also ensuring the Space Force information technology digital needs are met by effectively managing Space Force data and Space Force data and conducting analysis, staff, and operational. Colonel Rockwell also historic degree here. He served in a variety of duty positions within the cyberspace and communications career fields, including the Special Assistant to the Air Force Space Command Commander for Cyberspace Senior Officer Matters, the Wing Director of Staff, the Wing Executive Officer, the Network Operations and Security Center Chief, Squadron Director of Operations, ICBM Launch Control Systems Programmer, and Space Surveillance Training System Programmer. So Colonel Rockwell's value, service, and wealth of knowledge and experience make him a pace setter for his field, and we are therefore honored to have him present at today's event. And with all that said, Colonel Rockwell, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan. Appreciate that great introduction. You reminded me of a few things that when I started out my Air Force career, I actually started out as a software developer. So coming back to CTIO's office and getting to oversee the Supercoder program is kind of cool. Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be asked to speak, and I'm glad to be here with you this afternoon. Hey, communications paramount, so I'm always happy to speak with others about what we do in the Chief Technology and Innovation Office. I know as when I was in Space Delta 6, I looked at the Chief Technology and Innovation Office and I wondered, man, I think they do some pretty cool stuff, and they do, but it's different than what I expected it coming in. So I'll share a little bit about that with you just to broaden everybody's knowledge and understanding on what we do in the CTIO's office. But let me start out with saying, number one, welcome audience, and I'm surprised that you guys are here today because the March Madness for the men's basketball tournament kicked off today, so I'm surprised you're not all out watching basketball. I know if I wasn't here, I'd have the TV on watching basketball right now. If you're not a basketball fan, season 3 of Ted Lasso started yesterday, and honestly, I can't wait to get some more great leadership lessons from Ted Lasso and the team. If you haven't checked out Ted Lasso, highly recommend it. A little background on myself. As you guys heard in the bio there, I am a cyber operations officer by trade. I started out my military career enlisted in the Army for 3 years. After that, I went back to school at East Carolina University, where I received my commission in ROTC in 1997. From there, I spent 23 years in the Air Force doing comm and cyber. My last 2 years in the Air Force, I spent time as the Pacific Air Force's Deputy CIO and their Chief Technology Officer, where I was driving a vision to integrate data from each of the services into a collaborative warfighting capability to improve decision-making. Much of that work is still ongoing in the Indo-Pacific theater. In June of 2020, I transitioned to the Space Force. I spent my first 2 years standing up Space Delta 6 and the Space Force's cyber operations capabilities. In 2020, we started with 2 cyber squadrons and now have grown that to 8 cyber squadrons in Space Force. Each of those aligned to defend mission systems for each of the operational deltas. For the last 6 months, I've been working as Dr. Costa's deputy in the Chief Technology and Innovation Office. For those that don't know me, as a commander, I issued a pair of scissors to each of my commanders. And I told them, I said, go run with scissors. Be bold and courageous. Don't do anything illegal, unethical, or immoral. And I've got your back. I wanted them to go out, fail fast, so they could continuously learn from their failures as well as their successes. I'm a big fan on being a continuous learner. I believe that as leaders, we should always be learning. And when we stop learning, it's time for us to stop leading. I'm big on creating an environment where those who work for me can come to work and be their best self. That means we have to be able to be transparent with each other in order to know when things are going well in our lives and when things aren't going so well. I encourage cultivating agile and diverse teams to get after solving problems. For those that care, currently reading a book called A New Kind of Diversity, Making the Different Generations on Your Team a Competitive Advantage. Essentially, it looks at the different generations, age generations in the workforce today, and bringing their strengths together to maximize the organization as a whole. So I encourage you to check it out. All right, next slide. We'll jump into the stuff we're really here to kind of talk about today. So as you can see from this chart, the Chief Technology and Innovation Office is one of 5. It's really on there, it's one of 4 L2s. But there are now 5 L2s on the headquarters Space Force staff. We recently stood up Space Force S2 ISR late last year under the CSO. So there are now 5 L2s in the headquarters Space Force. Within the Chief Technology and Innovation Office, there are 4 directorates, or L3s as we term them. The first one is the Science and Technology and Research Directorate, the Innovation and Digital Transformation Directorate, the Information Technology, Infrastructure, Data, and Data Analytics Directorate, and then finally the Analysis Directorate, or as many of you may know, the S9. With a broad range of responsibility comes a ton of focus areas for us, and we're definitely a lean organization. I thought this was an organization of maybe 200 people. It's not. We have about 40-ish people with about 50-ish billets in the CTI office. So as such, I'm not complaining, but we must maximize the use of our people and ongoing work in one directorate to directly support the other, while working collaboratively together and forging meaningful international academic, industry, and multi-agency partnerships to deliver decision advantage. Suffice to say, everyone in CTIO is extremely busy working to impact technology change so that we can ensure operators have decision advantage moving forward. It's a unique headquarters function in CTIO. We're not the typical Napoleonic staff functions outside of our S9 analysis shop. Some of the key responsibilities and functions within the CTIO are to consolidate and prioritize and advocate for Space Force S&T needs, science and technology needs, to lead Space Force digital transformation by spearheading initiatives and spotlighting successes across the Space Force, to develop Space Force digital infrastructure requirements and coordinate with SAF-CN to deliver integrated and collaborative warfighting capabilities and tools, to ensure Space Force data is authoritative, accessible, accurate, timely, and complete. It's easy to say that, but those are tough challenges to implement. And then finally, provide analytic support for the SECAF, the CSO, and the Space Force staff with embedded analysts across the Space Force staff and the field comms to work with OSD, the Joint Staff, our sister services, and organize the efforts of our Space Force analytic community. Our mission in the Chief Technology and Innovation Office is ultimately to gain asymmetric advantage. And I'll tell you what I think that means here later on in the brief. For our Space Force and our joint warfighters by leveraging innovation and technology to move faster, not only catching up, but leapfrogging the pacing threat in key areas. Next slide. We should be on slide 3. Yep, that's it. So this is a fairly new slide we just put together. And I showed it yesterday at the 06 Steerco. So some of you I saw were at the Steerco, so you got to see first glimpse of this slide. But essentially, this slide is an attempt to show where the Space Force is at with regard to our current IT infrastructure and data. If you look across the top there, the first kind of 2 parallel lines across there, that's kind of where we're at today. And it's not to poke anyone in the eye, it's just how we developed and delivered IT over the last 30 years and the mission systems that we have today. We built them in silos. But today's warfighter environment really requires interoperable connectivity and data collaboration. And that's illustrated at the bottom of the slide down there with agnostic transport and data interoperability. Let me provide you an example. So as I walk through this, things like Starlink are, in my opinion, game-changing technologies for how we connect in, from, and through space in the future. This type of connectivity is extending the Internet of Things, and that applies to how we communicate with satellites both today and how we prepare for communications in the future. Today, most of our satellites don't have the sensors to communicate with technologies like Starlink that will and do extend the Internet of Things, but our future satellites should. In the future, we shouldn't need 70-meter dishes doing point-to-point command control communications, telemetry, tracking, and command, because those commands will be sent the same way we do any other internet exchanges. Chat, email, we send it out, we type in the commands, it goes out into the internet, and it gets delivered to its destination just like anything else. That's how I see the future of space communications and how we do TT&C in the future and how we build resiliency. Because an enemy that is using those same capabilities is going to be less likely to take those out in a wartime situation than they would if they weren't using them. For example, our adversaries use GPS. They know we're not going to jam ourselves, so they figure that we're not going to jam them when it comes time to go to conflict. So just, we got to think more like an adversary instead of thinking always like, well, we are the greatest country in the world today, but we should be thinking, how do we enable our adversaries to use some of the same capabilities we do so that we know that they'll be there? It encourages that resiliency. So as we prepare for the future, we should vertically begin to collapse our current mission IT spend into common and collaborative transport built on software-defined, cloud-enabled architectures vice the physical architectures that stovepipe our missions and innovations today. I can tell you at one of our Space Force bases, there are over 2,200 physical circuits coming out of the tech control facility. And that means every single thing is connected with its own separate individual circuit to whatever else it's connected to. We need agnostic transport and data interoperability so crucially to get after how we're going to do our mission in the future. We also need a common Space Force data fabric that collaborates with the greater DAF and DoD fabrics for consolidated JADC2 and improved decision advantage for our warfighters. All right, so I'm sure there's lots of questions on that. We'll get to those here at the end, but for now, let's go to the next slide. Digital services, how do we become a digital service? We talk about being a digital service. We're the first service built in the information age. So how do we become a better digital service, as we talked about in the previous slide? Well, through 4 digital focus areas: digital engineering, digital workforce, digital headquarters, and digital operations. Digital engineering is the connecting of our space missions and systems by that end-to-end digital architecture across the development cycle to rapidly mature our innovative concepts and deliver critical warfighting capability way faster while considering the threats to those mission areas and systems. Remember, as I talked about just a minute ago, the adversary gets a vote, and preparing for that threat ensures our resiliency. Digital workforce then is about deliberately developing technically proficient talent as digitally fluent. I'd never heard that word before until I sat in a meeting with the CSO and he goes, I need all my guardians to be digitally fluent. And I was like, that's eye-opening. So we need them to be digitally fluent with access to tailored learning opportunities, who work in a culture of innovation that nurtures a digital-first mindset, and who are incentivized to collaborate and empowered to act. A workforce that's more agile-minded, adaptive to rapid change, and encourages continuous learning. Digital headquarters, then, is a function. It's not a location, where decisions to improve our system and personnel readiness are made based on real-time data and intuitive dashboards, and where layers of bureaucracy are removed to enable and incentivize data-driven decision-making. Digital headquarters allows guardians to focus on what matters. It's to unburden the workforce from legacy staffing and coordination activities that either don't add value or can be better achieved through automation. It will exploit machine learning and augmentation where appropriate, allocating monotonous staffing activities to AI routines. I can't wait for that day because we're dealing with a lot of monotonous staffing activities in the headquarters staff today. And I know we all are across all of our services. The intent is to leverage AI routines, things like ChatGPT. How do we put those kind of powerful tools into the hands of our guardians faster and sooner? Digital operations then will exploit those advantages provided by an interconnected infrastructure and an innovative, digitally fluent workforce, able to work at the speed of operational requirements and needs. These 4 focus areas, as you look at this picture here, are designed to support understanding and provide framework for viable implementation plans and charting progress. But they're not discrete. They're overlapping and mutually reinforcing. Our office can't fully achieve our vision alone. We will need to work with the DoD, our DAF partners, acquisition, academia, and industry to achieve success for this digital vision and the digital space force we need. All right, next slide. So last week, yep, during AFA, I was there, but time goes by so quickly. I mean, I lose myself in my weeks. But last week during AFA, the Chief of Space Operations, General Saltzman, revealed his theory of success and lines of effort. I'll walk you through those and then kind of lay out how the CTIO's office contributes to both. General Saltzman's theory of success begins with competitive endurance. And there are really 3 prominent ideas. Number 1, to avoid operational surprise by a greater space domain awareness. So we have a thorough understanding of the domain, which includes our constraints. Number 2 then is to negate first mover advantage in space through resiliency. Make the first aggressive action in space to be inconsequential to the outcome of the competition conflict. And then finally, to avoid the unsustainable environment, to prevent destructive capabilities in space, which make the domain ineffective and even more inhospitable. Another way to think of this really is strategic deterrence. The LOEs, you may have seen them in recent news articles, are number 1, fielding combat-ready forces, number 2, amplifying the guardian spirit, and number 3, partnering to win. These LOEs align directly to the theory of success and really play hand in hand with one another. To field combat-ready forces, the Space Force must be resilient. We must be ready. We must be combat credible. These descriptors are specifically chosen to ensure our forces will accomplish their missions. For amplifying the guardian spirit, our guardians are our most valuable resource. There's no doubt about that. It's imperative that we get the most out of every one of them. The guardian spirit is a way of describing the most positive attributes of our workforce and really what distinguishes us as a service. The key for our service's success will be our ability to unleash our potential, the potential of all of our people. This leads into our training, doctrine, and procedures to ensure we are true experts in our domain to avoid operational surprise. And then lastly, partnering to win. Some of you may know this. The Space Force was deliberately designed and established by Congress without organic support capability needed to accomplish our missions. Let me say that a different way. Space Force was designed so that we must partner, we must collaborate, and we must innovate to accomplish our mission. We cannot accomplish our mission without the support of others. We will rely heavily on our relationships with industry, allies, foreign partners, our FFRDCs, and academic institutions. To avoid the unsustainable environment, we're building a coalition of like-minded spacefaring nations. But the partnering cannot stop at our allies. We must work diligently with academia and our industry partners in solving our greatest challenges. With that summary now shared, the CTIO's goal then is to provide decision superiority and advantage through asymmetric effects, delivered by providing the right digital infrastructure and innovative tools to craft a lethal warfighting force, while building partnerships and taking care of our number one resource, our people. When General Saltzman came out with his LOEs, we were able to quickly identify a few main objectives and then align those with the LOEs and our own priorities. Our CTIO objectives align to the LOEs, and we have three. Number one, deliver digital services for decision advantage across organize, train, and equip and operational activities. To shape the space futures we need via technology, innovation, and investment. And finally, to provide space enterprise analytic excellence and capabilities to strengthen deterrence and manage risk escalation. Of course, we have implied objectives and tasks to accomplish these objectives, but I'd like to share with you two high-level projects we're currently working on, and then share with you how our partners focusing on industry for this discussion can help. The Mission Network. We're calling it ION, or Integrated Operations Network. That's that agnostic transport capability. Initially, it'll be a dynamic cloud-based software-defined mission network at a highly classified level that integrates the U.S. Space Forces across our verticals. What we mean by that is that there are three field commands in Space Force. They are the Air Force equivalent to MAGCOM commands. One for acquisition, Space Systems Command. One for training, Space Training and Readiness Command, or STARCOM, and one for operations, Space Operations Command, SPOC. Yep, make your jokes. It's awesome. These three field commands have different missions, but all exist to organize, train, and equip our Guardians to present forces and capabilities to our combatant commanders. As we stood up as a service, we built each field comm to perform fit, form, and function. I was required of them, and while we were thinking about interoperability, it was not our priority. Speed was our priority. We had to move fast. Now that we have time to take a breath, we need to integrate our vertical field comms and other direct reporting units via a common transport layer and with common data standards and interoperability to ensure we're marching all in the same to the same drumbeat in the same direction and on board with Space Force's digital enterprise vision, which is slide 3 if you go back, that agnostic transport and data interoperability, which I mentioned. The next priority then is deliver asymmetric effects, and I told you I'd give you a definition, and here it is. The CTIO defines asymmetric effects as how we influence the adversary's decision process tools to improve our advantage superiority over the adversary. And then decision advantage is how we influence our own decision process tools to improve our advantage superiority over the adversary, i.e. evolved learning. So asymmetric effect would then be like the new bomber, the Raider. That would be an asymmetric effect because it's going to make the adversary rethink how we do long-range bombing. And so technologies like that are what cause those asymmetric effects. And when our adversaries create a new capability, hypersonics, which some would say maybe some of our adversaries are a little further ahead than we are, it causes us to reassess our abilities. So that would be what we consider an asymmetric effect. All right, so for partnerships, how partnerships can help. First things first, help us move quickly. We are willing to accept a certain level of risk to move fast and deliver effective combat capability to our joint force. In addition to moving quickly, there are lots of things that our industry partners can help us with. One of the efforts the Chief Technology Innovation Office is involved with is called the University Consortium. Some of you may have heard of it. Really, the vision behind the University Consortium is to connect universities to DoD space research opportunities and then transition them to Space Force capabilities. Communicate problem focus areas to Space Consortium members, and then foster collaboration between the Space Consortium universities and between the universities, governments, and industry. So the University Consortium differs from the University Partnership Program because its focus is on leveraging academia's research efforts, where UPP, University Partnership Program, is focused on STEM and growing people in academia. UC is focused on the research of that academia. Additionally, the collaboration with the government laboratories, industry, and international research institutions aims to provide us world-class research and infrastructure to accelerate innovation and then transition and foster space workforce development. Our 5 research areas are cislunar security and space domain awareness. Number 2 is advanced space power and propulsion. Number 3 then is in-space servicing and manufacturing in support of national defense. 4 is advanced remote sensing technologies and operating concepts. And number 5, cybersecurity and data trust for space-based military missions. Now, that list is going to grow, but those are the first 5 out of the box that we're resourced to get after. Evolving our architectures to be more resilient and delivering space capabilities with agility and at operationally relevant speeds are our top priorities, and they require the Space Force to leverage the innovation across the commercial space sector. Outreach into commercial and small business sector, and in particularly those businesses outside of our traditional space and defense industries, are crucial and afford us great opportunities. Many opportunities today exist to set a national North Star vision, to leverage existing commercial satellite capabilities for a hybrid space architecture, enabling joint all-domain command and control, to create a space internet. Similar to SpaceX is doing for the Earth, we need to do that for space, to build an inclusive cislunar economy. In conclusion then, as I said in my earlier comments, the Space Force was designed so that we must partner, collaborate, and innovate to accomplish our mission. The commercial space sector has some unique things happening: infrastructure as a service, transformative AI technologies like ChatGPT, compute, and data storage, and the list goes on. We look forward to our partners in industry, academia, and beyond to lead the way and bring us along. Evolving our architectures to be more resilient and delivering space capabilities with agility and at operationally relevant speeds are our top priorities, and they require the Space Force to leverage the innovation across that commercial space sector. To quote our recently retired First Chief of Space Operations, "I'm not confident that we can achieve victory or even compete in a modern conflict without space power, and I'm not willing to lose in order to learn." I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to share with you today, and I look forward to the discussion. Semper Supra.
Awesome. Thanks, Rocky. You appreciate the opportunity for you to come and share your story and where the CTIO is trying to go for the Space Force. I think those that are probably close to the building may have some idea of what you guys have been working on, but to be able to reach a larger audience like this is definitely an opportunity I'm glad you took advantage of, because even I learned a few new things that you guys are working on, and excited to continue to partner and collaborate with you. One of those being, continuing to increase data operability both across the Space Force and the Air Force. And right now we know that we have the DAF data fabric and the SDA MVP that we're working on with your guys, and I look forward to doing a launch on that here. Transitioning that over to CDAO here in the next month or so, and I see that as a pivotal first step and improving that interoperability, especially between the Air Force and the Space Force. And your comment on NCAA, I hear you loud and clear. I may or may not have a live feed up on one of my tabs in the background here. I won't spoil anything for any of those that aren't watching any live score feeds, but it has been an interesting day already. So just a tease, not a spoiler.
Yep,
yeah, exactly. So
Cinderellas are awesome.
Yep, indeed. And I do have Ted Lasso queued up, and my daughters made me promise I would wait to watch it with them, which will probably be tonight instead of last night. So definitely a good show there for those that haven't seen it. Yep, indeed.
That's too funny. That's too funny. My daughter sent me a text yesterday. It's Ted Lasso Day. Woohoo!
Exactly. I know. Beware the Ides of March. Nope, it's Ted Lasso Day.
Yep.
So okay. So now we would like to open the floor up to questions. And for those who submitted questions, we'll read those out. And for those who didn't have the opportunity to do so yet, please insert your questions into the chat based on what you heard or what you hear in the Q&A session as well. So we'll go to the first question. It is from Tech Sergeant Eddie. I think he is in the SPOC himself. He says, Colonel Rockwell, how do you think squadrons can better utilize super coders within their units?
So the great question. So number one, we have to give them the tools they need to do their job. I think the Super Coders program is an amazing program, and I'm glad we have it. However, I think we got the cart before the horse a little bit because we didn't give them the tools they need before we sent them out to the field. We trained them up and we told them to go figure out how to be innovative. And that's a good thing. But at the same time, we as leaders have to give them the tools so they can do those innovative projects. And it's kind of like that slide number 3 shows. I need to give them an ability to not build software in silos. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on out there, but we're still building it in those silos of excellence, as I call them. We need to get to a capability where we have software defined capabilities up top above that transport and data layers, so that we can share software across multiple mission systems and get the best breed. And I just see so many opportunities for us to save money, for us to drive innovation, and so that's how I see the future for super coders. But we got to give them the tools.
Absolutely. Okay, this next question is from Martin Bochelle. He says, you mentioned cloud technologies. What do you see as the best inroad for industry to demonstrate capabilities on GovClouds?
We've got to have, to me, cloud technology is really more about being able to get to the data when we need it. Kind of in your area there, Ryan. The data is so crucial to everything we're going to do in the future from an operations perspective, and having those common data, those connected data fabrics. I think we have a family of 6.
Correct.
Right, and having the ability to go across each of those and show greater efforts with JADC2 and like I was talking about when I was out at PACAF, is getting the services to work together is a huge challenge. And when you can get that and get access to their data, there's so much goodness there, and really cloud enables all of that, right? But we can't just do cloud and park data away like we've been doing for the past 30 years, because then we're just stovepiping it in the cloud. So in my opinion, it's really about how do we collectively do a better job of tagging and making our data accessible in that cloud environment to the operator whenever they need it.
Absolutely. You stole my thunder. I was about to say, the priority needs to be on registering and tagging that data with the minimum standards. So I'll do a shameless plug here real quick. Yep. DoD just published their minimum metadata standards. We're currently digging into that from the Office of the CDAO, and then we'll put out a DEF supplement. So that'll be coming up here pretty soon. And also, my data services team has been working on an enterprise data catalog metadata registry, which will employ those same or employ, enforce, make sure that the data sets that are registered in there are compliant with both the data guidance, the DoD guidance and the DAF guidance going forward. And of course, we know the services will need to have their unique requirements as well. So, but absolutely. Okay, third question is from Tracy Russo. She says, how is Space Force defining the future rather than reacting to adversary capabilities? You mentioned hypersonics and Starlink. Is Space Force creating a longer view strategy, i.e. China equals 100 years, to get to the future faster and challenge the impossible rather than as a 5-year strategic plan?
Wow, there's so
Yeah,
much to unpack in that
exactly.
question. Thanks, Tracy. Definitely a lot of thought put into that. I can't say that we do have the long-term outlook with in our sights. However, as you know, we have to plan on a 5-year budget cycle. So getting after the closest nearest thing usually is what our focus becomes, and we kind of take our eyes off that longer term effects. I will tell you, I absolutely think we've got to think about how do we, for example, I mentioned that our adversaries use our GPS signals for some of their weaponry. Why aren't we thinking about how do we use Beidou and GLONASS to augment our GPS capabilities? The adversaries can be less likely to jam their own stuff, and it's more likely to get through. And I'm sure we've got people thinking about that kind of stuff. At least I hope so. But those are the types of things. And then how do we take a Starlink and point it out to space so that I don't have to use those 70-meter dishes anymore, and I can just, number one, the adversary can track whenever I take one of those 70-meter dishes and I point it at a vehicle. They can look at the telemetry and they know what vehicles I'm talking to. That's a huge vulnerability, in my opinion. And then, not to mention the cyber vulnerabilities to each one of those tracking stations. I'm more concerned about the adversary taking out us that way than I am from a space or even a kinetic attack. And so, how do we nurture? I've seen some questions in there about acquisitions. How do we nurture some of the new software-defined technologies and begin to start putting those things in space? I met with a couple companies this week that are doing some pretty creative things about stretching the edge to space and building data platforms in space that can be redesigned, because it's all software defined type stuff, and it's pretty interesting. We've got to nurture those kind of capabilities. As a matter of fact, it was interesting. One of them told me that one of the big companies invested in them, but then they don't even use them when they're building their own satellite vehicles. So I'm like, we've got to figure out some of those things as well. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it's definitely fun to talk about and to think about what does the next 100 years hold. I will tell you there are a lot of things we're talking about in Space Force and trying to think through. The acquisition piece is changing quickly. I know our acquisition professionals are all over trying to expedite as quickly as possible, bringing things online faster, cheaper, buy versus build, if we can do that. And I think we absolutely can. So I think they're absolutely working towards that direction. We just stood up, I believe it was last summer, Honorable Cavelli took over SAF SQ, and so that's the partnering arm to SAF AQ for Space Forces. And so I'm excited to see what SAF SQ is going to do moving forward with our acquisition capabilities. Over.
Yeah, that was a tough question from Tracy. I think you definitely hit some of the high points. We could have an entire Innovation Connect about that topic as a whole. So great question, Tracy, and great answer, Rocky. So let's go question 4 from John Walsh. Following the ION effort, what is CTIO doing to standardize digital platforms and software development pipelines to more easily enable digitization efforts?
Well, we've got quite a few things incubating, I would say. I know the team is working with the folks out at, is working with General Purdy's team down at Patrick on some innovative capabilities that they've been pushing forward. They're kind of they're not kind of, they really are an incubator for innovation and some of the things we'll be able to do moving forward. I don't have, I can't pinpoint all the details on each of those things. I just know there's some great work going on there. And I can have Mr. Mike Torres reach out and pinpoint those things for you. He's got lead on that. But there's some great work going there. And then let's see.
So Mr. Walsh does actually have a following question to that as well. Related, obviously. Who would be responsible for developing, scaling, and sustaining core digital infrastructure?
So we have, again, I'll go back to SAF SQ, and I think they're really trying to figure out how we're going to innovate there and do things differently than the way we have done them in the past. In the past, we had Space and Missile Command, and they pretty much did almost all the acquisition. Today we have Space Systems Command, we have Space Defense Agency, we have Space RCO. We have multiple acquisition arms that can do some of this for us and possibly change how we do acquisitions in the future versus how we've done them over the past 10, 15 years. So I don't have an exact answer. It could be any one of those three, or it could be someone else. I mean, MDA is working on some things too. And we also need to leverage a lot of the work that NRO is doing. They've got a lot of very creative things going on there that we could be leveraging over here on the Space Force side.
Right, and that is for Space Force centric requirements that absolutely need to bridge to U.S. Air Force capabilities. But the next question from Evan Kelly, I would say further expands on that question and probably ropes in both you and I on the conversation or on the question. Evan asks, there seems to be agreement across the board on the necessity for an integrated network, but little conversation on who will deliver it. Do you see a need, or who do you see as a responsible service agency to deliver the transport agnostic network? And when I first read that, I was thinking from a data fabric perspective, but he's talking about the transport perspective.
Well,
so I'll let you take that first.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I know that SAF-CN is vigorously working with HN to deliver the ITAS capabilities and get that out on contract. So we're all anxiously awaiting some of those capabilities. BIM is a vehicle that they talk about that will allow multiple vendors to compete and offer services. I think that's one acquisition methodology that I'm looking forward to, because we can use AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, whatever commercial cellular company to get after doing some of the base mobile connectivity. I know Buckley has 5G service now across its entire infrastructure, thanks to the initial ITAS efforts. It was some of the growing pains going through it were tough, but we got through it, and I think the people out at Buckley are pretty happy with the services they're getting out there. So I think we absolutely need more of that. I also think how do we deliver certain enterprise standards, but then allow maybe from an Air Force perspective, allow the MAGCOMs and then Space Force to come buy some of that capability. So offer a menu of services that we could come and buy that would be standard with the rest of the Department of the Air Force moving forward. I think options like that are things that SAF-CN is really working on. So.
Yeah, absolutely. From a CNS perspective. And when I first read that question, I was thinking of a data fabric layer within that network. And as you had referenced, the Space Force is working on one, and there's other data fabric type capabilities across both the Air Force and the Space Force. And right now in the C&D CDAO, we are working on building out a DAF data fabric and working to federate the ones that are out there. And for those that haven't built something already, making sure that they have the capability as well. So, so if you're talking enterprise-wide perspective, CN would be your belly button with the supporting PMOs. And then if you're talking Space Force or Air Force,
gentlemen, I'm sorry. This is Lieutenant Colonel Kelly. I'm the one that asked the question. I was referring to a joint environment across services.
Even larger than that.
Yes, I see these silos getting bigger, but not going away, because we're still doing things in a service-specific ways. So I was referring more to a joint delivery.
Yeah, so I think as you look at organizations like DISA, in the past, most haven't been super happy with how DISA delivers services, but some of those are pretty good. And I know General Skinner's working on a path forward that would allow us to be more joint inclined. I know he's directed his team to work with SAF-CN and look at not just the Air Force, Department of the Air Force services, but the Army services and the Navy as well. That's a tough problem. I mean, we all want to be joint, but everybody also wants to keep control over their own little fiefdom. So it becomes a bigger challenge at the higher levels as well. So what do they call it? Choke con. Everybody wants to have choke con or authority to control certain things, and we've got to let some of that go in order to get after ultimately being successful with JADC2. To your point. So.
All right. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Rocky. All right. Next question is from Lieutenant Colonel Harrigan. Asks, what is the plan for bolstering the supercoder program in the Space Force? They need deliberate development and career management, i.e. treating them like whiskeys. So not only professionally develop them as coders, but also safeguarding them to ensure they have a career progression to compete with their peers.
Yeah, I can't say we're there yet. I know we are having discussions for how do we take care of our current supercoders and then growing them from growing our future supercoders. Honestly, I think, as a Space Force, we're still grappling around, our 4 career fields that we have and how are we going to adjust those as well moving forward. Lots of discussion. I haven't heard any decisions on way forward yet, but right now the plan is to ensure that those supercoders are tracked, and we're working with the S1 to develop that kind of capability. We don't have a real plan yet for how we match them to their next assignments, and we absolutely need to work through that. That needs to be the near-term real issue that we work through to ensure that they don't atrophy when they go to their next assignment if they want to keep being on keyboard and being innovative with those software skills. So we still have work to do there. And I know Colonel Landry's team is working on that for us. Over.
Okay, thank you. This next question is from Brent Ehlers, I believe is how you pronounce it. How is the U.S. Space Force thinking about modern identity, i.e. ICAM, and preventing vendor lock?
Yeah. So I will tell you that right now, the way we look at ICAM is we're absolutely following what CN is working through with their solution sets. We're not going to be different necessarily than the way the DAF is procuring it. So we've got to be interoperable with the rest of DAF as we think through those problem sets. We may be able to do some things, some Pathfinder things for Department of the Air Force on some of our mission systems moving forward, and maybe they can leverage us to do things faster. We're still waiting to kind of see how we proceed moving forward. So I don't have a good answer. As far as ICAM goes, I don't see us doing anything different than what the rest of DAF is going to do. Over.
Yeah, and actually at our DAF Data and AI board yesterday, we had the CTO, Mr. Jay Bonsi, provide an update on the Zero Trust ICAM roadmap. So what Mr. Ehlers and what Mr. Kelly asked previously, those are both very broad topics that we could actually probably look to tee up for future Innovation Connect. So I think that's 3 now that have come out of the questions. So
So Ron, great point. I heard Mr. Bonsi talk about it at the Cyberspace Symposium a couple weeks ago. So that'd be a great brief for him to give here.
Exactly what I was thinking. So I think you're taking the record for the toughest questions here, at least for 2020.
No, it's all good. Hey, I love it when people ask hard questions, because I used to be that person asking those hard questions, and and I apologize. I can't give you better answers, because I absolutely, when I got to this point in my career, I wanted to be able to give better answers, and so I feel your pain, and I understand, because I've been there and I'm still there. So. All right, what's the next question? Did I lose?
We might be having some technical issues on Colonel Keogh's end.
Okay. Yes, because he's watching basketball. He needs to turn basketball off so he has more bandwidth to do this.
Well, I'll go ahead and read our question for Ms. Kuba. It seems actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Taylor Heron, tracking formal RFPs, etc. However, any insight on the fast track options pre-contract to just iterate with the Space Force to see if there is some or quicker, instead of being slaved to a 6 to 9 month acquisition cycle, hackathons, or access to representative data storage and use cases to see what we can dev out on our own dime.
Yeah. Hey, bingo. I absolutely don't have an answer for you on that. I'm not the acquisition expert. I can tell you, I know our team is really looking at, when I say our team Space Force on the acquisition side is really looking at is how do we do these things quicker. And I know General Gutlines, I've heard him say many times, how do we buy versus build where we can? And in order to do that, we've got to have faster timelines to contract. So I know he's all over that with his team out there at Space Systems Command. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you.
All right, I heard that comment about streaming basketball, so
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, I know. It was the scores. It wasn't the actual games, just the scores. But yeah, I don't know what happened. I could hear you guys, but you guys couldn't hear me any longer, so I dropped out and came back in. Did you get the question from Heather Kuba already?
I don't think so.
No, sir.
Okay, copy. It seems that modern warfare will be more likely to go from ground to cyber, but the sense of urgency to that transition does not appear to be a significant line item in the budgets. With the recent demo from Baidu, it demonstrates that the U.S. has an advantage in the AI/ML realm. How do we capitalize on that given the constraints of our procurement process?
So that's gonna be a tough question to answer, but I agree that we don't seem to have a sense of urgency. I will tell you, as a Delta 6 commander, from a Space Force perspective, I saw our budget double in Del 6 because General Whiting was such an advocate. He talked about cyber being the soft underbelly of space, and that, you know, a lot of our capabilities were going to be mitigated by our adversaries via cyber versus kinetic weapons to start. And I've seen the intel, and I think that's absolutely the way they're going to go after it. And, you know, so maybe there hasn't been a significant line item in our overall DAF budgets, but I can tell you Space Force is pouring money into cyber quite heftily in order to ensure we have that availability when conflict comes to play. So, but we absolutely need to do more.
I would add that Operational Imperative 7 for
Yep.
SecDAF, you know, that was led by 16th Air Force. So
Yep.
that's going out and getting funding for capabilities, cyber capabilities as well. So we're getting there. We hear you loud and clear, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, and we have some great partnerships with our folks down at 16th Air Force that are really helping to train us up on some of our cyber capabilities. And can't really say what those are, but they're doing some great things, and we're super excited about as some of their AI capabilities are able to be pushed up to our TS and SAP networks. That'll be a game changer in our opinion.
Sure. Okay, I think we have time for one last question, and it's from Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Jones. He says, are you utilizing the DoD CDAO, so the Chief Digital and AI Officer at DoD's Tradewin Marketplace, to search for new capabilities? This opens access to OTA with more than $1 billion of headroom for innovation or sole source acquisition.
I think that's a question for you, Ryan.
Yeah, so somewhat familiar with CDAO's Tradewin Marketplace, but we can definitely send out more information on that as a whole. And again, another future Innovation Connect topic, if we could pull in some of our DoD brethren to talk to that. So
yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, yeah, I like that idea, because I'm not super familiar with what's going on the DoD CDAO's capabilities. I know what you guys are doing, and I'm tracking that, but honestly, you know, past that, I don't have a whole lot of bandwidth, so that'd be awesome.
yeah, copy. Okay, so with that, we got just a couple minutes here before we finish up. So Rocky, thank you for taking time out of your day. I know that you are just as busy as the rest of us, and so trying to find the white space on your calendar can be quite difficult. So thank you for doing that and sharing your story and the CTIO story with our audience today. And so I do have some quick housekeeping task to finish up here. We'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to join today's event. With the support of DoD innovators, Innovation Connect has become a success, and we look forward to spotlighting more innovative projects in the future. And I think we identified potentially 4 or 5 new ones just from today's Q&A session. So thank you for your thoughtful questions and participation today. And also, approved videos of our Innovation Connect events will ultimately be available on the Department of the Air Force CDAO YouTube page once they're cleared by PA. If you have a future topic for Innovation Connect, please send your recommendations to the DAF CDAO Communications mailbox, and our team will review your proposal. Also, please follow our LinkedIn and Twitter accounts for future events and registration information. And with that, this concludes today's Innovation Connect. Our next Innovation Connect is slated for 13 April with a special presentation from Diane Stahali, the Chief Responsible AI Officer at the Department of Defense Chief Digital and AI Office. Thank you again for your participation today, and we look forward to seeing everyone next month. Out here.